All right, let's start learning from other owners in the trades who are successfully scaling their businesses. What's up, blue collar business owner? Welcome back to the Blue Collar Prosperity Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Maskill, where we focus on helping guide you to have a prosperous business. Today, we have with us Chris Wisniewski. Chris is the Vice President of Integrate Comfort Systems, or ICS, a family owned HVAC company based in northern New Jersey. ICS was founded by Chris's father in 1990, and he's had the privilege of helping lead the company into its next generation. Chris has been doing this full time since the year 2000. So that is Chris Wisniewski. Welcome, Chris. Thank you so much for being here. What is going on today?
Yeah, Paul, well, thank you very much for inviting me here, and I hope I can be of value to you guys. Just let me know what you want me to start talking about.
Awesome. Yeah. And that's really the point of bringing on owners who have actually been there and done that is there's listeners all across the globe listening to this that are stuck at different parts and they're stuck at, different milestones, different hurdles. And obviously you've gone through a lot in the last 25 years, really last 35 years since your dad started the company. So I really think these types of conversations will provide a ton of value and some nuggets and some wisdom for people that are on the journey that you went through. So give our listeners just kind of a quick backstory of how your dad started the company, how you came to take it over, and how did this business come to be?
Yeah, sure. So, my dad came from, he worked with Train. He came from a industrial commercial background, and his story, and I probably haven't probed him for his specifics in a very long time, but I know his story is basically that he was frustrated too, working that, his management, his ownership, the company he worked for wasn't doing things quite correctly. He thought he could do better service. And essentially he started out making relationships with commercial industrial clients and decided to just go on his own. And he started a company and started doing work on industrial slash commercial. And that went on for several years. It was his level of expertise. It's what he knew. It's what he liked. Over the years, as he grew the company, it became a little more, added on into light commercial and even picked up some residential work, but only, residential for friends of businesses and things like that, never marketed as a residential company. I started working summers and weekends myself as, just to fill in on the sun, right? And not that I wanted to, but I liked making extra money on a weekend. And when I was a teenager, I got exposed to, different job sites. And as you can imagine, as somebody that's like 14, 15 years old, walking into a facility with a giant mechanical room with absorption machines and chillers, you're kind of overwhelmed and going like, this is cool stuff, right? Even though I had no idea what the heck it was, it's cool stuff. So there's always a component of the work that I admired and enjoyed and thought it was really cool. I learned a little bit over the years, but for me, it was still summers, weekends, help out. And, I went to college to be an architect. That was my aspiration. Well, when I graduated, I went right into the business. I skipped the whole architect thing. There was a couple things that happened, and my father was really busy. My last couple summers working full time in the business as I was going to college was me mostly doing what I do in architecture school anyway. I was working CAD. I was doing drawings, shop drawings, and my father really needed help. Needed help in the company. He was extremely busy, and I could see there was a lack of. And I don't want to insult anybody, a lack of smart people that could really help him out. There was a lot of workers, but there's probably, he needed young energy. I could definitely see that. But so 2000, I started working full time, right? And the company was commercial, industrial. Slowly, my second year in, we started picking up some high-end residential work in New York City, which I'm sure even a lot of your HVAC listeners probably don't even know what that means. It's not the suburban McMansions or anything like that. It's the penthouses, the brownstones in the city, which, it's the top 1% of clientele in the world. Billionaires and billionaires, right? Complex projects. Those are the kind of people that hire world-renowned architects. They get the best engineers. The projects are complicated. And I like that stuff, right? That was the work itself, the technical aspect of the trade is what kept me in it. And I loved it, and we became good at it. right? Um, However, as the business progressed and my personal responsibility in the business kind of moved up and up and really more about running the business, there was some things that I noticed about the work that became apparent years and years later, and basically it became transactional, right? Um, which is something that I guess it didn't connect. So my father, I guess, he probably had a plan. He didn't tell me that, get himself out of it and get me in it. Wasn't quite the message, but I totally get it. I totally get it. So just by default, I started running the business more than my father started running the business many years ago. Technically, I would say from day one, I was probably more of the boss than he was. He wanted it that way. He's not an office person. He never liked paperwork. But as I became more of a business owner, um, I'm not sure I like the business owner aspect of it. I mean, I was good at it. I think I'm good at it. I like I like the organization. I like the structure. I can do all that stuff. But the work itself, what we were doing, obviously we were doing service work, but we were doing a lot of our revenue comes from plan and spec projects, commercial, high-end residential, where you work for developers, you work for the builders. And there's definitely an aspect to it where we had great relationships with some builders. They form a team. They treat you like you're a sub, but they treat you like part of the team, and there's sort of a reward in that. And then there's the aspect of the business which is purely transactional. You're a number. You're a guy who bid the job. Go do the job. You finish the job. I don't know who the heck you are. Next job, you're going to bid again. If you're not the lowest guy or near the lowest guy or whatever the qualifications are, I really don't care to talk to you, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So a lot of that work as we progressed and grew the business and wanted a bigger job, which is where I thought the intention of the company was headed. We were built that way, right? We were adding in middle management, foremen, and project managers, and I thought, okay, like the goal of what I'm doing here is end up with a bigger job, and be on my way of doing skyscrapers. But I quickly learned that's really not the satisfying aspect of what we wanted to do. So for a while, I was a little bit disconnected I was going through the motions of the business, because that's what I thought. I lost track, I guess, of my own personal goal. It was sort of, I took the torch from my father, thinking this is where the business that he wanted to create, without really thinking about what's the business I want to create, right? So the work became, and I think this is a thing for tradespeople. Back in the day when you worked for a general contractor, builder, generally they would have a hard time finding HVAC subs. They know 3-4 people, maybe make some connections, and every time they bid a project, maybe it's just 3-4 people. Today, a general contractor can go in Blue Book and literally get several hundred bids, right? And that's when it became kind of apparent to me as well, when I was trying to, you could say I was trying to court this builder because they were doing, in my eye, fantastic projects, and I was trying to get in with them. I was trying to do some networking, and and I got up to one of the owners of the company, and I said, "Listen, we're bidding some stuff for you. I'd love to get some feedback." And he goes, "Okay, let me put you in direct touch with my estimator." One of the estimators get back to me and he goes, "Who are you? Which one are you?" And he kind of sent me what they call a level sheet. It was a spreadsheet of literally 150 other HVAC guys who were giving prices for the project. I started to just see, listen, this business is literally moving away from relationships, the commercial side of it. There's very few people left that really care. The modern builder, modern contractor, it's purely transactional. The trades are a commodity. Nobody, and I'm generalizing, but less and less of our contractors we work with cared about the relationship. Those guys were old school. They started to retire. new companies, giant companies, national companies started showing up on these projects. Nobody cares. It's a little disappointing to me, and I always wanted to kind of change that and make that happen. I always looked into like, hey, I got to shift the company and the work we do more of direct to client, direct to owner, right? That's really what I wanted to do. Well, one of the most direct to owner sides of the business is residential, right? Didn't quite want to do residential. Residential doesn't seem glorious coming from what we wanted, what with the kind of work we were doing. But it slowly started to shift, and really, honestly, COVID happened, right? COVID made that transition like that. Because our work was New York City kind of centric. New York City stopped, full construction just stopped, like nothing happening. And really made us, into a different company. We had to, do a 180, figure out what we're doing, how we're doing it, and just start doing it because the type of work we were doing was on hold. I think there was a transition moment. Like pretty much 75% of my company thought, hey, we're doing this temporarily, and then we're going to get back. And really, it wasn't. And there was a lot of learning experience on how to transition down to that kind of work, and it's not easy. I'll tell you, it's not easy, especially if you're expecting a certain kind of revenue. You have to be very stick to your guns mentality, and it didn't happen. Trust me, there was moments in time where a builder came along. Here's this big $800,000 project. And you go, okay, let's do it. Let's take it. So at the same time, we're trying to work directly with clients only, restructure the company, have different processes, different standards of how we do things. And then yet we're still doing this plan and spec job because it just showed up in front of us. And it took a long time to just say no to certain projects. And that's a very tough thing to do. I mean, literally, not just from me, from my people, like there was almost, like internal strife. I'm not going to say fights, but like, it's like, hey, we're kind of slow. We should take this project. And I go, you know what? No, let's be patient. Let's figure out, let's ramp up marketing. Let's figure, so it's not an easy transition to go from doing big scale projects to lower scale projects. It's definitely a learning curve. But I think we've gotten to a point where we're sort of coasting along in terms of what we do. And Paul, I know I'm dominating the time here. Do you have a question or about what you said? Because I could keep
I was
talking.
just going to let you. I was letting you roll, Chris. You've obviously told this story before, and it is, I know there's a lot of people out there, especially in the last 3, 4, 5 years, as PE has really gotten into the home service space, and they're looking to buy up service companies. There's a ton of people that are doing their best effort to switch from construction base to service base, mainly on the residential side, because of cash flow reasons. You get paid right away and you don't have to compete on price and all the other things. And it sounds like for you, COVID was really that final straw of like, all right, we got to get rid of this construction work. It's killing me. We're competing against 150 other people, and really the only thing they care about is price. I tell everybody, if we're competing on price, whoever wins that race goes out of business first, because they're the first last place basically. So when you went through this, I see a lot of people struggle going from construction to service for a couple of reasons. And I'm curious of what you experienced. One, I've seen where companies are like, they just draw a line in the sand and they quit all of their construction before actually truly understanding what does it take to run a service company, because they're totally different. All of a sudden, you're doing dispatching, and you're doing, your technicians now have to sell, and the pricing's totally different, and it's getting the technician's mind wrapped around, holy cow, we can charge this much. This is insane. So like a lot of times it's that, like they just cut it off and then they're struggling from a just pure revenue standpoint, because you can't just go start a service company overnight. The other issue I see, like it sounds like that you dealt with, is just getting people to buy into that, because a lot of times the people we hire for a construction company are not the people we would hire for a service company. So how do we fit the quote unquote square peg in the round hole? And then, a lot of times then it's just, now we've got to teach them technically also how to do different work. Instead of doing all this construction and big stuff, now we're going to be doing diagnostic work, and we're going to be dealing with homeowners. And instead of just going on the job site and just, quote unquote, hammering away all day. So what were some of the biggest struggles you experienced from making that shift from construction work downsizing really from a scale and revenue standpoint to then go to the service side in order to have better cash flow, better profitability, and really a better run business.
So everything you mentioned, yes. Every one of those. Everyone, yeah. So one thing I didn't expect is, I kind of made a company meeting with some of the higher level management people that inside that run the company, and I kind of said, like, listen, this is the kind of company we're going to be now. This is what we're going to do. And not to say we don't do any construction work. We still retain a relationship with those great contractors that do the type of work that don't bid out, right? So we still do that. As long as we're working with the kind of people that we want to work with, I'm considering that under the same umbrella.
Yeah.
So yeah, the buy-in from the people was something I didn't plan for. Maybe I underestimated it. I thought, like, hey, I'm going to tell them what we're doing. Everyone's going to love it. So yeah, everyone was like, yeah, sure, okay. And then I put some of the existing people. We put some of the existing people into slightly different roles, and quickly found out, no, they're not really capable of doing this role. Even though they go, from the outside in, you look at him and be like, hey, listen, he's got the skill set. He manages crews. He does this. He can do, what we want him to do now. I quickly found out that not everybody is. First of all, it's not maybe their desire. Some people like to be somewhere for weeks and months on a construction site, right? They're familiar with it. They're comfortable. They want to understand the job. And and they're fantastic and great at managing that construction site. But if you put them on a 2 or 3 day site, they don't like that flow. They just feel like it's not enough time for them or whatever it is, right? So there's just different skill sets. And the looking at the money, right? So if you got a manager and he's, prior he had a $300,000 project that he's looking at, and he takes that with a lot more value. Then now he's looking at some kind of project that's like 12 grand. He goes like, oh, this is just nothing. He goes, this is just nothing. and you have to convince him, listen, this is that 12 grand is going to be repeated, right? It's like, we have to give, the volume of it a chance. So there's a lot of buy-in from people. There was a difficult thing to adjust, and the adjustments, took time. And the worst part, if I had to go back in time and talk to myself, is really hanging on to people for too long. Because it took a lot of time and effort to get good people when we were a huge, large company doing these large scale projects, right? Headhunters, agencies, you paid a lot of money for them because they're hard to find. And then now you have them, you see the skill set, you see they're good, they're generally good employees. You don't want to lose them. So you're trying to make them fit square peg, round hole. You're trying to make them fit. You hang on to them for too long, and you figure out they don't fit. So there's a bunch of that. I wish, like, if I went back in time, I'd probably, act on what I already knew. Is that, yeah, this is just not the right fit. We just need different people with a different mentality for projects that are more, residential based or light commercial, small scale projects. That's the biggest challenge. And the second biggest challenge is really customers. So this is something I know that on the residential service side, everybody deals with. So even my prior experience, I was dealing with professional estimators, professional architects, professional engineers, foremen, right? That's what we deal with. We deal with people that know the industry. We talk in industry language. There's really no combating like what we're trying to do. It's a full understanding of our business, the way we're trying to sell it, and what our logistics are and things like that. Now you take that and you try to talk to a homeowner, right? So a homeowner is they're guarded. They have no clue about anything. You have to really relearn your industry and learn to explain it in grammar school language, right? And you need to have that different sales mentality of trying to sell to a customer who, thinks everything's negotiable. that he thinks that a $10,000 job could be done for $1,000 just because, you know, somebody down the street, some irrational reason, right? Um, Residential clients tend to be irrational. They tend to wear people out. That's the other part of it too. There's plenty of good HVAC people we had. They just could not deal with residential customers. So you have to get the kind of person that has the patience to deal with a residential customer. You have to kind of sit back, understand what a residential customer is, and not get frustrated by them, because they could drive you crazy. You know, it's one of those things that you could do the best job in the world, you could do everything correct, but they see something they didn't like, and you know, they don't want to pay you or something like that, like some crazy thing, right? So there's a lot of that had to be relearned. You know, I guarantee you that somebody starting a brand new HVAC company that worked for a residential HVAC company already, and they're starting it, they probably didn't have to go through everything I'm just talking about, because they're kind of in that world. And it's probably easier for them to start a company from scratch. I think it would have been easier for me to start a company from scratch versus taking my company and making it a, you know, residential company that does residential and light commercial work.
Yeah, no, and you know, and really the two biggest things you said there was one, hanging on for too long with the people you already have, because they were great people. They're great, you know, commercial installers, or they're a great office person or project manager or whatever. And then when you make that switch to residential service, they might just not fit. What I have found even in those situations is when you finally do make that decision and have that tough conversation with that employee that's been with you for a long time and just say, hey, this isn't working out. We apologize. Today's your last day. However you have that conversation, usually there's relief on both sides, because that person's pretty miserable as well. And now you've kind of gave them the push. The nice thing about being in the trades is whoever you do let go, they could really go get reemployed by like tomorrow or by the end
Yeah,
of today by somebody
exactly.
else. So it's not like you're taking food off their table. And a lot of times it's a relief in the nudge they had to have once you have that heart to heart conversation. And then the second thing you mentioned is, you know, just going from, you know, your guys on site probably really aren't working with that many people, and they're on the job site for a couple months. And now it's like you could be dealing with 3 or 4 homeowners per day. So all of a sudden you're dealing with 20 people per week instead of a couple people per week. And like you said, those customers, the homeowners, you know, they're making buying decisions, you know, probably more or less based on emotion or what their friend told them or what they believe. Unless they are engineers. Engineered homeowners are probably the worst customers ever, because they think they know everything. When they'll tell you right away when they open the door that, hey, I'm an engineer, and you know, I just need a little guidance on this because I could do it myself. I just don't have time because I'm busy being an engineer. So I'm sure everybody listening's had those customers as well. But one of the things that I've kind of picked up on your journey as well is kind of the also upside of being able to deal directly with the end user and being able to get that feedback. Because when we're working with these intermediaries and, like you said, the general contractors and the builders, and you know, it's a little bit it's a little bit harder to run a business our way when we're always kind of stuck in the middle. So for those people that are, you know, out there either just starting their HVAC business or making this transition to do more of the service work, what have you found is like some of the great things that have come to be of dealing with that end customer and being able to go one-on-one with the homeowner, the person that's actually signing the check and using, you know, what they bought?
Yeah, so there's a reason for it, right? I mean, I just mentioned all the problems of getting there. That, you know, I didn't do it for the problems. There's a legitimate reason, and actually, I'll back up a little bit. There was an employee that quit many years ago, and on his exit interview, he kind of said that, you know, he was a good employee. He's a little disappointed. Like, he does all these projects, he does them like 90% of the way, and he pours his, you know, heart and soul into the project. He's there on the job site for 6 months, a year, or whatever. He goes, and he never gets to see like the results. He never gets to meet the people that move in, whether it's a commercial entity or high-end residential. He never gets a thank you from anybody, right? And he said that to me even years before we made the switch, and it kind of stuck to me. And when I got feedback from employees, especially the installers, right? That's generally their consensus, that they become very transactional because they just do this work. Like, yeah, my project manager will say, hey, good job, guys, and whatever, and they move on to another job. One of the reasons and I'm not going to say residential because really the company is direct to client. So we have a lot of commercial, entities we work for where they own the building, they're in the business, they will work directly for them. There's a thank you at the end. That's really it. There's a satisfaction, right? The guys that come in, let's just say they replace an HVAC system. They show up in the morning, they stay there till, let's just say, late. They work hard. Good clients, good homeowners. They'll give them, they'll give them water, sometimes lunch. They'll say thank you. They'll be extremely grateful. And the guys walked out of there thinking like they accomplished something for the day. That's a big part of it. That's a big part of the type of employees that we have, and what the employees are frankly looking for. They're looking for that sort of thing they don't get on the purely commercial end. They don't get that. Even as a service tech, if you go to a commercial place, sometimes there's some kind of a super of the building, some kind of building maintenance guy. He'll point you to the roof. You go up there, you fix the problem, and that's it. Yeah, maybe every now and then, if you like, I don't know, if you've it's like a hair salon or something, you go in and all the women in there go, oh, thank you, like thank you for getting us the AC back. But that's a big part of it. And on the higher end level, one of the things I enjoyed, I enjoy solving problems. My project managers enjoy solving problems. I like the fact that we can walk into a place from beginning to end, come up with a solution, come up with a design, do our own way of HVAC, sell it to that client, and see it to the end. We get the fruition at the end of it working exactly the way we said it was going to work, and the satisfaction from the people. And we're in control of that. That's honestly it. The one of the downsides of even if you work for wonderful general contractors, and we still do, it's the fact that you can do everything right as a subcontractor. You can be the most efficient company in the world. Somebody's going to screw up your schedule at some point, right? It's going to be like, hey, like we need you guys to start up the systems. And this is actually a true story from like a week ago. Clients moving in, we need to do the final startup. Great, let's schedule it for Wednesday. Wednesday we come in. Oh, guess what? They're pouring concrete on the driveway. You can't even get your trucks anywhere near the place, right? Or something else is going on, and it's like there's an efficiency loss, and you're always not in control. Or you do a wonderful job, but the GC has lots of issues with the client. Huge punch list. They're not getting paid, right? You finished your end of it, but then you're waiting for your money forever. Or it may not even come because the GC totally screwed it up. So being in control is really the key. That's really what we're after. We want to be in control of what we do. Like I was tired of us performing amazing and wonderful, and then somebody in the process screwing things up, whether you get like a bad general contractor or something else happens, or concessions have to be made at the end of the job, you don't get paid the full amount, or just simply just the weight of the money. It's about control. That's essentially what it's about. So, we want to run a business where we are in control of beginning to end. It's our schedule. It's our payment terms. And we get to see happy clients.
Yeah, no, and I think that's really it, is being in control. When you can control the entire process, you can control your cash flow, you can control how happy, your team is and the culture you're building. Because like you said, a lot of times when we are working under the GC, there might be an issue that all of a sudden the homeowner gets outrageously angry and they think it's the HVAC contractor based on the conversations or based on what's not working, but really it's the GC. But now all of a sudden you can't control that whole process. You got a bad name because the GC wasn't prepared. They weren't organized. You went in there and the painters were in there, or you went in there and the plumbers were in there. So you couldn't do what you need to do. And then all of a sudden they can't close on time and they blame it on the HVAC guy because he had to come back the next day or whatever it might be. But what I've learned along the way too is, like you said, it's not bad to have a construction division. To me personally, I really like it when it's on your terms, because it's also a great way to bring in new people into the trades and a great way for apprentices to learn how are these houses actually built and constructed? How are these commercial buildings actually built and constructed? And then eventually when they do become service techs, or they do become, more on the service side, they have all that knowledge that we wouldn't be able to give them if we weren't doing construction. So
Yeah.
really, really good insights there. And at the end of the day, 99% of the people that go in the trades because they like helping people and they like fixing things. And when we can scratch that itch for them every single day, they're going to be much more excited about showing up to work. They're going to be much more excited to deal with the customers that might not be that, the best. When you show up as an HVAC technician, on the service side, your customer's probably very uncomfortable and very mad. They don't have heat or they don't have air a lot of times. So they're already kind of having a bad day. And when you can turn that day around, and by the end of the day, they're thrilled, they're pumped, they're giving you tips, they're high-fiving you, leaving you Google reviews, that feels pretty good. So some really good insight there. So where are you guys at now? Just curious of what's the, what, you don't have to give us revenue numbers you're not comfortable with. Like, how many technicians do you have on, both sides of your business? What's your office staff look like today?
Yeah. 14 techs, about 28 install crews for the residential side, right? Because we're big. The other thing I found out is, and it just came together with marketing too. It's harder to break in with service, right? What I mean by that is that, we're looking for revenue. If you're an established company, you're one of these big P giants, you can advertise, say, like $12 for tune-up, right? And you send in the sales text, which is another problem with the industry I don't like. I didn't build a company like that. I didn't build a company as a white shirt sales tech type of company, which I know is the model that everybody copies. But so we built a company more of cold marketing, but installation. So we actually it grew our service division with our installation division. Probably the opposite of what most people do, because we're actually expert installers from the background we come. We're set up for, sheet metal shop, everything, right? So it was an easy way for us to really start in the residential market. So yeah, we sell a job installation wise, we sell the maintenance agreement. Now we have a word of mouth referral, and that kind of grew our service division. Otherwise, for service, you got to wait until service is needed, right? It's like you got to wait till it's hot. You got to wait till somebody has a call. They don't even know who you are. So that's why our install side is actually bigger than our service side, more or less. But listen, we have probably a larger company than 90% of what's in my state. There's some giants in here, the private equity, but we have what most residential companies consider a very large company. I have 100 plus people, right? It's a way smaller company than before, but it's a comfortable size. And I'm not sure growth in terms of numbers is where our agenda is. It's more about refining efficiency and doing what we do better. One of the things I didn't mention is I went to do residential work, but personally, I was never a fan of the residential market. I think it's the most underserved market in terms of how HVAC is done. PE companies are great at providing that white glove service. We're here, we show up, we're presentable. The guy's not on crack, he's got his teeth. We got tablets, we're efficient. But when it comes to installation, it's like nobody cares, right? There's no standard, right? And I don't know what part of the country you are and how much you know about this. Different parts of the country will have different types of work, but around me, it's like the bottom of the barrel, the flex octopus, so coming from a world of Planet Spec where engineers, you specify the type of screw and threaded rod you use, so everything is built properly. Seeing that type of work is it's almost disgusting to somebody who likes to trade. So that's one of the things we promise not to do when we build ourselves a little bit differently, that we make excellent commercial grade installations in people's homes. Now there's a fine game to play with the cost and everything like that. But if you look at my team's installation, you'll know the difference between your average Joe who installs out of his truck or something like that. So there's a huge difference with that. Now, I lost track of where I was heading with this. Now, so basically, we built a little. Part of the thing is I wanted to build a different company, right? A little bit different. I don't want to do the same stuff that's done by any other company. One of the things I didn't want to do, and even when I told the team we're going to start doing residential work, is they go, "Oh no." They go, "Oh no, we're not going to crawl around in attics and do these flexipus things, are we?" I go, "No, we're going to bring a different standard to it. Something that's self-satisfying." right, to all of us because, my people, I built a team of people that care about the actual trade, the actual physical work. They care about it, right? It hurts them. It hurts them to look at a picture of, when our sales guys go out and they show a picture of existing, units, existing installations, and we look at it, we want to cry sometimes. We go like, how does anybody pay for this, right? So our industry has a lot going on with the lack of standards in terms of what we do. I think as I go around from houses to houses, I don't really see the kind of mess from plumbers. Yeah, I mean, you can see a disaster. There's a disaster jobs from every trade, but generally, when you walk in, electrical is pretty decent in most houses. Plumbing looks pretty good in most houses. It has to be, right. Heating boiler guys generally have nice, clean setups. Then you look at the air conditioning guys, and you go, they were on crack, right? They were on crack. Like what's like I think it's going to change. I'm all pro the industry having more stringent regulations and oversight on how it's done because the average home has horrible air conditioning. Right? Even the new builds, even a brand new development that's built by a builder, it's the bottom of the barrel, quality and all that kind of stuff. So we wanted to do something that is kind of different, right? That was the and I tell everybody. So everybody tells you marketing wise, don't advertise that you're better. Advertise that you're different. All right. And a lot of companies will use that. Oh, we're different. We wear green shirts, not white shirts. Still doing the same shit. Now, like, we actually do things differently. We have a bunch of stuff. It's even in our sales presentation that shows you what we do differently. And I tell everybody the fastest way to grow your HVAC business is to stop copying everybody else. I think there is a way too much abundance of this. And when I say white shirt, do you know what I mean? I know it's kind of a term we use of this private equity thing where it's a Xerox of a formula, and it's great business. I mean, listen, if you want to run a business to purely make money, yeah, that's a formula. I understand. But if you have a little bit of HVAC pride and you want to do things differently, and you think those companies are missing the mark on true customer service, which I do. I think they are. They're missing the mark because they have a wonderful sales presentation. Most of and I'm generalizing. Listen, I know there's companies out there that are good companies, but around me, if you take the majority of those companies, they have a wonderful presentation on the front end and horrible stuff on the back end, right? But I say stop copying everybody else. Make your company an extension of what you believe in, your values, your standards, your story. That's how you attract the right customer. Build a team that's loyal. Stand out in the industry and, where everyone else looks the same. And that's really my story too. That's why we transitioned too. Cause like I want to do something here. I want to do something differently. I want, if another HVAC guy walks in the attic, I want him to know like, hey, this installation looks fantastic. Oh, look at the sticker. Okay. This is an ICS installation. I asked that question to the employees, when they walk up there, is somebody that walks up in the attic after you finish that install, is somebody going to be wowed? And you go, yeah, they're going to be wowed, right? Which you don't find in most houses. You don't find in most homes. But that also takes the right kind of customer, right? And I'm not after every single customer like a private equity is. We're after high-end customers mostly. Like we do regular suburban type homes, but for the most part, 75% of what we do is high-end. And my demographics here support it. I'm in Northern New Jersey, New York City, Northern New Jersey. A lot of billionaires even, right? Here, and a lot of people that care about HVAC, right? Because there's average Joes that really don't care. So we can't sell to somebody that really doesn't care. They just think it's a box. There's a lot of people that care, and there's a lot of there's enough money to support it because obviously the pricing of what I'm talking about has to kind of align with what we're doing. So we do something different. We attract slightly different customers, and that's what we're after.
Yeah, no, and to me, I think the biggest thing out of everything you just said about the quality of work and doing things differently is like you mentioned it, finding people who take pride in their work and know what good work looks like. They're then going to want to go work for you because they're actually valued at your company versus if they go to another company, that doesn't value quality work and craftsmanship and all of that stuff, they're just not going to enjoy working there. So you really do, obviously your customers, like you said, your customers care and they value that, but it also allows you to attract a lot better talent
No.
and people that want to do more than just enough to get by and do just enough to, not get fired and that kind of stuff. So I think that's super important. And just having the background that you have of like, hey, this can be done better because we do it on a daily basis and we can teach you how to do it, is so important as well. And for everybody out there listening, like Chris said, find that niche where you want to operate. A lot of times, when we first get started, we're just operating on, hey, what's the other person charged? And we can do a little bit better than that. But when you can find your ideal people and serve them better than anybody, then you can charge accordingly, no matter what that is. Whatever your ideal customer is, there's enough of them out there to turn it into business. Go make it happen. So as you look into the future, Chris, what's next for you guys, ICS? Where do you see this thing going?
Well, I think the business is always going to be niche for what we do, right? Just the reasons I kind of described. Like, there's no aspirations to take over the state, be multinational, anything like that, right? There really isn't, and I don't think that what we do kind of supports it. It's a little more hands-on. It's a little bit more involved, but we want to, we want to turn. So northern New Jersey, a lot of 100-plus-year-old homes. There's still a lot of homes here with no AC, like nothing installed. Like, we want to put an AC and a heat pump, which is what we kind of specialize in every home that doesn't have it. We want to. There's plenty of business for us. We are such a densely populated area. There's a lot of business for us. We want to make people happy. That's honestly it. We want to find people that want to live in their homes for the next 10 plus 15 years, or it's their forever home. And we want to make sure that we retain a relationship with them for that entire time. That's the company mission. We're not just installing air conditioning. We're installing something that needs tender love and care through its lifetime, and we're here to give it to you. So yeah, refining our process, making ourselves more efficient, keeping up with the technology, just providing the best service we can provide. That's it.
Love it. And I think to me, the biggest takeaway for anybody out there is you have a mission. And when you have that mission, it makes it really easy to make any decision in your business. Your mission is to, make people happy. So whenever you have a crossroads in your business, no matter what, if you have a mission, it makes it a lot easier to say, should we do A or B? Well, which one is more aligned with our mission? Oh, it's going to make them happy. Okay, then we're going to go do that instead of making the decision based on dollars. Because if you make the decision based on your mission, the dollars will come. So as we wrap this up, Chris, most people they ask for like one book or what would you recommend? We want our listeners to take immediate action after listening to this interview. So give our listeners just one simple thing they can do within the next 24 hours to move their home service business forward.
Well, I think there was a couple important moments for me where I didn't like them when they happened, but later I learned they're super important. And I would say have one honest conversation with a customer, a client, past, present, potential. Ask them what frustrates them about your industry, whatever you're in. That insight that they give you can spark simple changes that immediately move your business forward, whether it's fixing a process, clarifying your message, or identifying a new opportunity. Listen to the clients. Simple things sometimes just bring a lot of action to the business. And there's a couple client feedbacks that moved our needle. One of them, initially, when we started doing this residential work, clients kept telling us like they don't understand what we're talking about, like technically, right? And it was frustrating for us because we weren't able to sell to them immediately. And we started shifting our language and explanation and using analogies to make them understand. It's more of a sales company, like being more salesy, right? Make them and that kind of process carried into the language over the phone too. So if you talk to people in my office over the phone, if you talk to my sales guys, we talk like fifth graders.
Yeah, no, and I love the advice, and I don't know if you've read the Pumpkin Plan or not, but Mike Michalowicz talks about that in the Pumpkin Plan of ask, your customers what frustrates you about our industry. Because if you just say what frustrates you with doing business with us, they're not going to be honest because they don't want to
Right.
hurt your feelings. But if you say our industry in general, they'll tell you exact, honest feedback of how can we then improve our process. And it might be they're confused because you're using too big of language, or it could be nobody in the HVAC space actually answers the phone, or nobody actually shows, whatever it is, you're going to
Yeah.
get honest feedback on what do our customers value and how can we be better. Chris Wisniewski, thanks again for coming to the show, sharing your journey and providing a ton of wisdom and actionable advice for all the blue collar business owners out there as we continue our journey to prosperity. Before we sign off, Chris, though, where can our listeners go to keep in touch with you and reach out and have an additional conversation?
Additional conversation. I'm kind of big on Facebook and the HVAC Facebook groups. If anybody joins any of those Facebook groups, there's a Facebook group called HVAC Owners Group. If you're an HVAC owner, and in that group, you probably know me, but otherwise, that's a good place to find me. Our website's icshvac.com, but that's probably the best place to really find me, is just to reach out through the Facebook groups.
There you go. Find him on Facebook, guys. That's where I met Chris, is actually on Facebook looking for guests to bring on the show. Chris, really appreciate your time and coming on the show today.
Yeah, Paul, thank you. And you got a great thing happening here. So thank you.
And before we go, as you know, there are a lot of moving parts when it comes to creating consistent positive cash flow. However, the journey starts with making sure you are priced right so you can have a growing and more profitable business. I've created a super easy to use pricing calculator for everyone in the trades. You will no longer have to guess what you should charge. You'll no longer have to call around your competition and see what they charge. This calculator is easy to use and will provide you confidence and clarity that you're actually priced right. It also comes with a step-by-step PDF guide and a video walkthrough. So head on over to thebluecollaradvisors.com/price. thebluecollaradvisors.com/price to download it today, and so you can start implementing it tomorrow. Until next time, remember, what got you here won't get you there. If you are ready for different results, it's time to start doing things differently.